All right, and welcome back to another episode of Trent Talks. I am Trent. I wanted to talk a little bit today about flipping houses. Is flipping houses a good business model? Is it worth it to flip houses? Can you make a lot of money flipping houses? And I'm going to give you the number one most important thing in order to have a successful house flip. I've worked with an investor over the past 2-3 years, and he was my number one client for several years. I'm a realtor in the Tampa Bay area, and I had the privilege of meeting this guy Brandon, who actually reached out to me on social media because of my videos and things like that I do, and he needed a realtor in the area, so I met him up at his property. Beautiful 3-4 bedroom with a pool over in Clearwater, completely furnished and remodeled, and I was able to sell his house for $400,000, which was the asking price. But he told me he was from Columbus and he wanted to start flipping houses down here more often, and he had been doing this for like 10 years. So I thought it was a good opportunity to learn this side of the business, and what I eventually found was that I loved this side of the business of flipping houses. I loved just going into a dirty, raunchy, sketchy house and just looking around and trying to calculate all the rehab costs. And over time, I was able to get better at calculating rehab costs. HVAC $1,200, floors $5,000, walls, paint $5,000, kitchen, bathroom, etc., etc. So when I'm looking at properties that need to be rehabbed, and I'm looking on the behalf of an investor, potentially myself one day, then I figured out how to estimate rehab cost, and I was able to present that along with the offer. Hey, this house is $180,000. I'm estimating it needs about $5,000 or $50,000 in rehab costs. So I learned how to do that, and from this point on, he wanted me to keep finding properties. He told me I want to do like 100 properties, and what was it, like 2023, 24. And I said, well, you know what? How about I just be your realtor? You'll just be my only client. And my whole goal is to get you properties because I can find them the properties. I get a commission from that. I was helping him remodel the properties, and I was getting paid hourly for that, I was doing it more just for the experience because I wanted to learn how to do this for myself one day. And then I would also get a commission on the sale of the property. So I'd help him buy it. I'd make money, a couple grand while remodeling the property with him, and then I would sell it. So each property would net me about 10 grand. It was a pretty sweet deal. And I was able to repeat that process a few times. But this is what happened. So we are in St. Petersburg, Florida, Tampa, the Tampa area. We did a flip in Bradenton, which is down close to Sarasota. We did one in, we did a couple in St. Pete, one in Safety Harbor. Now, one of the things you'll need to know about flipping houses is that you don't want to try to reinvent the wheel. If you find kind of an odd, obtuse house, or like a regular neighborhood, but you got one house that's just giant and big, and you want to try to flip it for $1 million. Like, don't try to go after the weird listings. Just try to keep it basic. Like, you want to just find a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, around 1,000 square feet. You want something with lots of comparable properties that are sold. So you want a lot of those, because one thing we did, and I'm going to regret this for the rest of my life, but I found him a property, 400 grand. I said, look, we can sell this for $1 million. It was huge property in just like a regular neighborhood, but it was in a desirable part of town, Safety Harbor. It was on a dead-end street with on 0.6 acres, which is a lot. There's preserved wildlife in the backyard, and it had wooded views. So you're in the backyard, you think that you're in, the woods somewhere, but you're in Safety Harbor, Florida. You're still like a 20-minute drive from the beach. So that we learned from that is you don't want to try to find something crazy and go for home runs. You can go for a home run, and that might actually help, but at the end of the day, just stick with the basic things. We also flipped a mobile home, and that ended up being a disaster because we were veering away from what we know best, or what he knows best, and I was just helping him. But we were, like, I never had sold a mobile home before. I never represented a buyer that bought a mobile home. So we were, trying different things, and they weren't working for us. So at the end of the day, I said, look, We need to just stick with the 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, you know, something medium size, 1,100, 1,200 square feet, because it's easy to comp. And so that's one of the mistakes we made flipping houses. Another problem that we ran into that can be a potential disaster for you is the appraisal. So we went into a property in Pinellas Park. We did some light rehab on it. What did we get it for? I don't remember. But basically, I'd gotten it under contract for $300,000, and we had on hand, we had an appraisal for $315,000 from the hard money lender's bank. So the hard money lender did their own appraisal before they bought the property. They said it was worth $315,000. I think we listed it maybe $310,000. We got $300,000 for it. The appraisal comes in and says it's worth $280,000. So either what you can do here, and if you don't know what an appraisal is an inspection that the bank orders to validate the value of the property. They come in, they have all their own metrics they use to estimate the cost of a property. It's way more in depth than what realtors do. They go really in depth with it, but I don't always agree with what they say. And this appraisal came in and said, we bought it for this price. You did very light rehab, and you're trying to get like 50, 60, whatever $1,000 on top of that. And he had a stick up his ass. So he came in and said the property was worth $280,000. Well, there went all of my guy's profits. So I'd gotten him the price that he wanted. He would have made about 20 grand on that property for very little rehab. But the appraisal came in and said it was worth less. So we had to just sell it at the appraised value. Otherwise, you have to ask the buyer to fork up the 20 grand. And most people don't have that kind of dough, because they're already paying, you know, realtor fees, closing costs, down payment, moving cost. Some people got to pay off their landlord because they're breaking the lease. So that is one of the biggest problems we've kind of had with these properties, where we remodel it. I do the ARV beforehand, the CMA rather, the comparative market analysis beforehand, and we get the product done. We get it under contract. And that happened with the Bradenton property too, where he was going to make $20,000, $30,000. They came in, said it's not worth that much, and they made us drop the price. And both times he ended up losing like $1,500, like a very little amount, but he ended up losing money. But what you also lose is the time spent that you worked on the property, you know, all the times you drove over there and actually did the work on it. And then to do all that work and have to pay money at the end is a blow. And I think this is what we learned about the Pinellas County, the St. Pete Clearwater market, Tampa. We didn't do anything in Tampa yet, but I have sold a few properties in Tampa, but we haven't done that yet. But in the St. Pete, I don't know. We also were flipping at a very inopportune time. So we were doing a lot of this when the market was kind of on the downtrend. This was post 2020, 2021, 2022, when prices were going up, 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 up. And then we were doing all this when prices were going down, down, down. I have a theory that some of the appraisals were in cahoots with, I don't know, the state of Florida to lower the prices as much as you can to make homes more affordable. That's a whole different conversation. So what we learned is the 3-2 thing, where you want to just get a house that's in a regular neighborhood, that's a regular house, that's easy to price. But the number one thing that I learned after purchasing these properties, or helping him purchase these properties, is, and let me take a sip of my drink because I'm thirsty. The price you buy it at is going to be the most important factor. Now, that's tricky. Where I live, it's very competitive. There's a lot of people purchasing properties here, especially investors, for different reasons. Who knows? Rentals, flips, what have you. Maybe wholesalers, I don't know. But it's hard to get a property at the right price. But case in point, we got 4059 19th Avenue South in St. Pete for 150 grand. And Brandon was able to remodel the house, which I helped. And we did put it on the market for a little bit, but he said he'd rather keep it as a rental. So what you do is you go to a bank to do a refinance of the property. So they cash you out. He can collect his money and pay off the hard money lender. But when he did that, cash out, or refinance, there's a thing called a loan to value ratio. And if the bank appraises at $300,000, well, they will give you 70% of that $300,000 to finance your property. You fuck. Sorry, it's my cat. Anyway, So with this particular property, he actually made 16 grand. So he bought the property, remodeled it, made 16 grand, and then now it's rented out. So I think he kind of breaks even on the rental thing, but he was able to make $16,000 and keep the property. But the problem is especially on market. So off market is most likely where you're going to get the best deals, but on market properties, those people are just trying to get as much money as possible for those properties. So they're not really able to drop the price as much as they can because they've already hired a realtor. They've probably done a few things with the property. They want maximum value. They're not going to accept your lowball offer. But if you're able to get a house at the right price, as low as you possibly can, you're most likely going to be able to profit the most. Obviously, goes without saying, but some of these properties we were buying, and he lost a little money because the appraisal came in. If we had gotten them perhaps like $10, even $20,000, $30,000 cheaper, then he would actually made money with the potential to make a lot more if the appraisal went well. So if you're going to flip properties, I would expect potentially, absolutely, it's going to be a risk. It's an investment. There's going to be risk involved. When you're doing the rehab projects, there's going to be things that come up that you don't necessarily know about beforehand. So there's another 5-10 grand. So if you're calculating rehab costs, I would also calculate an additional 10% of your cost to factor in these unknowns that you're going to run into, plumbing issues or some type of, like we had to tent one of our properties for termite damage. That was like 3 grand. So you're going to have your unknowns. I really wouldn't do it unless you absolutely knew what you were doing. If you knew how to do a lot of the things yourself, that you could maybe cut a few corners and not have to pay contractors. If you're able to do drywall or flooring or paint or windows, demolition's the easiest one, but you still have to know a few things when you're demoing a property. And I would potentially try to put yourself in a position to be doing like 3-4 projects at a time. So if one of them loses money, maybe your other 3 make money and you're able to overall generate a profit. But the possibility of losing money is definitely there. They lost their ass on the trailer. They lost their ass on the Safety Harbor property. And I'm partially to blame too. It's not all my fault. And that brings me to another point. If your realtor's telling you, hey, this property is X price and we can put X amount of rehab in it and we can sell it for X amount of price. Realtors know what they're doing, but at the end of the day, we're still human and we still miscalculate things. So I would have, second or third opinions, maybe pay somebody to take a look at the house, throw them $100 or something. Hey, will you review this house for me, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it can be very tricky, and pricing a home for sale can be a very tricky process. It's very hard. That's why realtors get paid what they do, because it's a hard job. So make sure you try to just invest in something that's easy to price, easy to comp, like they have comparable properties for sale. Buy low, average your rehab estimates a little higher, like 10-15% higher than what you originally think. And just be prepared to lose a little money. So you don't, like, if you have very little money to begin with and you do this, you could lose your ass. So make sure you have some money, or make sure this deal, if you have to even fork up like even 10-20 grand, this deal isn't going to sink you. But I also think it's important to pick a market like where he primarily does his business in Columbus, Ohio. It's important to pick a market that is easier to flip properties in. Like, I live in Florida. I don't want to do that kind of thing in Florida. Now, would I fly up to Columbus, Ohio and maybe crash with somebody for a while and do a rehab project for like 4 or 5 months? Like, yeah, I would do that up in Columbus, Ohio, because it just seems to work better up there. I'm not in that market, so I don't know. But according to him, he makes a lot of money, like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. And that's what's so beautiful about flipping the houses. You can make between like $30,000 to $50,000, even $70,000, $80,000 on a flip. I prefer other ways in real estate to make money, like being a realtor. If you list a property and it doesn't sell, like, you're only out a couple $100. or wholesaling properties, getting something under contract and assigning it, because you could potentially make a lot of money, but if the deal falls through, worst case scenario, maybe you lose your escrow if you put escrow in. But at the end of the day, you know, I've had wholesale deals fall through because I do that too. I just call them and I just say, hey, look, it's not going to work. I'm sorry. You just cut ties, do the cancellation. And I had to cancel one of the previous deals that I had under contract. It was not a dollar on my pocket. I lost a little bit of my humility, and it was embarrassing to call them up. But you know, at the end of the day, flip properties only if you can afford to take a loss. I find it very, very fun. It's very fulfilling to go in and demo out a place and get all the tile up, bag it up, throw it in the trailer. I like the, you know, the workout aspect of it, where you're getting a little workout in at the same time. And I just got a lot of fulfillment by doing these things because I felt like I accomplished something that day by going in there and completing a task. And I would also, if you're going to do this, have a lot of people on your side already who know what they're doing and can help you. We've had a problem with one of our guys who seemed like he knew a lot of what he was doing, and he did. I felt like he was a great employee, but obviously he wanted a premium price for his stuff, and he ended up doing a lot of things wrong that we had to go back and redo anyway. So make sure you have people on your side who know what they're doing, maybe potentially someone you've worked with before on a different deal. And you want to have people that know what they're doing and that you can rely on too, because at the end of the day, you're there to make money, and if they start trying to nickel and dime you for everything, that's going to cut into your overhead cost, like your overhead profit. Like one of our guys did, he would do something, he would pay him in advance, and then he would just keep asking for more money. Like, oh, hey, how about you just do the thing that we paid you to do and stop asking for more money? You already got paid to do it. And they would just try to come up with the reasons to get more money. And people I find people in the fix and flip space to be very sketchy, to be very dishonest and disloyal. It's a very dirty game because contractors get paid to do something and not do it, or take their time to do it, and you're behind. And another thing to factor in is if you're purchasing a property to fix and flip, most likely, unless you got their own cash in your pocket, most likely you're using other people's money, a hard money loan, for example. So every month, you're paying like 11% interest on that hard money loan, and you got to factor in that on top of rehab costs. You got to factor in realtor fees. We want our 5 or 6%. You got to factor in closing costs. You just got to factor in multiple other things: holding costs, realtor fees, closing costs. When you buy the house, closing costs when you sell the house. Maybe you got to pay a little to your realtor when you buy the house too. And then you have rehab costs. So it can be very expensive, very fast. This guy seems to have it down to a science. He's very brilliant at what he does. That's why, you know, as a realtor, I spent as much time as I could to help him with these projects, because now as a realtor, I go into properties. I know how to do a lot of different things. If someone's selling their house, this happened recently. I had a house for sale in Tampa. We got it under contract. The buyers asked for a few repairs. You know, that would have cost them probably like $300, $400 per repair. But I looked at it and I told them to type in the addendum, just type in a qualified person to repair these things. We went and got some electrical tape. We went and got a little metal plate to cover one of the electrical exposed wirings in the attic. I got some caulk because they wanted to caulk around the vent that goes into the attic. So because I have worked on properties for several years at this point, I was able to benefit my home sellers in this process. I didn't charge them anything. This all took me like 30 minutes to get done. And we were able to get it done, take some pictures and send it to them. I've helped build fences before. I've painted for my listings before, my sellers. And so doing all this work on properties, I was able to have kind of a know-how and experience to do these things for my home sellers. So doing this will help you become a better realtor too, a better homeowner as well. If you know how to do simple repairs, like I know how to turn the water off to the whole house. So instead of paying somebody $600 to replace the faucet in the sink, if that were to break, I could just go to the store, buy one for $70, turn the water off, drain the sink, and then undo the plumbing, put it in. But my first house with my first wife, we had that issue where we had to pay $600 to replace the sink faucet. Had I known how to do all these things, I would have knocked it out with under $100 in under an hour. So we really learn how to do a lot of things around the house. And when I'm talking to even a potential home seller or somebody who is my client, I'm able to also estimate, see problems that maybe I didn't see before and estimate how much it would cost. And I have people that can come do it, because people that I've worked with on previous properties, I can have someone come out there and knock this out for them. So I think it's a great experience if you can somehow get into flipping houses, at least as a worker or helper to help flip these properties. If you are like a realtor or even a homeowner, it would benefit you in many different ways. And once you do a lot of these things, you kind of know how to do it. You're not scared to do it, or you know who to ask to get it done. So just be very wary. I do love this aspect of real estate. It's probably my favorite because I like being hands-on. When I go to work on properties, I get a lot of enjoyment by physically doing things with my hands, as opposed to being a realtor where I'm just picking up the phone. Hey, you want to sell your house? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then you just show up here, sign this. And yeah, it's all very easy, but I just have a little bit more fun when I'm actually working on the house. So I do find it a fun experience. It's a very risky endeavor. If you want to get into this field, I would potentially, like I said, try to get in with somebody who's doing it and take as much money as they're willing to give you. Don't try to nickel and dime them for your hourly rate or your daily rate, or however you want to negotiate that, because at the end of the day, you're in this process to learn how to do this. You want to get the experience, and the experience is worth way more than what he's going to pay you anyway. So yep, keep that in mind if you're going to be flipping houses. Once again, I'm Trent. I'm a realtor in the Tampa area. If you're looking to sell property, seller finance, I'm purchasing seller finance properties. If you have a property that has low equity and you're going to lose money on the sale, I have a process of purchasing those properties where you actually make money on the sale. Give me a call. Or if you're in the Tampa Bay area and you want to sell your property, buy a property, also give me a call. You can find my number in the description of all my videos. Thank you for watching another episode of Trent Talks to his phone in an empty house. Have a nice night.